There we are. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for your patience, I guess, in our long-awaited fall time coffee hour. If any were eagerly anticipating it, who knows? But yeah, good morning. I will have Lars or Shane kick us off while I figure out some of the details.
All right. Can you put the slide up?
Yeah.
Nice to see you, Mary, Paul, and Rita virtually. Thanks for coming. And for today's coffee hour, we're going to transition to talk a little bit about our fall and winter type work, kind of recap a little of what we've been up to lately and what's coming down the line here. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of these new tools that we have for tree and brush removal, and then some reminders, and then obviously time for question and answer. And then again, these times that we meet are mostly so we can check in, talk about what's on your mind, provide you some background to the work that we're doing by seasons, give good reminders about, the seasonality of our work and what's kind of the priorities at the moment, and just have more opportunities to check in and maintain good contact, because when we have good communication, our projects are just so much more successful. And that's just so hard to do with so many parks and so many people. So I'll go ahead and just introduce this first slide. If you can see that at home, and for those folks here, that is a painting from 1854 of the Wisconsin Heights battlefield, overlooking to the northwest Sauk City on the other side of the Wisconsin River. You can see the Wisconsin River kind of flowing through there, and the Baraboo Hills in the background. And then that land that is in the foreground is the DNR Blackhawk unit today. And this is what the landscape looked like back in the mid-1800s. Very different from what we have today, but it's really fun to look back at some of these sketches and paintings and hear the stories of the folks that settled the land, and to glean little bits of information about the vegetation and the natural communities back then. Not that we are trying to make the landscape look exactly like it did back then. The landscape is always changing. It's a shifting mosaic of different natural communities, shifting over space and time based on changes in environmental conditions and fire frequencies. So we're never trying to mimic exactly a certain point and make the landscape look exactly like it did in 1830. We just try to reference these natural communities as a model for our work and what we do, and what we strive for going forward, using these same natural communities on the landscape, maybe not exactly the same place, but what's important is that we learn from these historical notes and images and use that information for sort of guiding us in our work going forward. Very, very interesting to see how things have changed, and it's very inspiring to me to see what things look like in the past. So lots more of that kind of stuff. If you're interested in seeing that kind of information, let me know. All right, so moving on, next slide.
Upcoming training opportunities. We have another Certified Land Steward orientation on Thursday, January 11th. So if you know of folks who you want to get land steward up, have them come. We're about halfway full. And then we, really wanted to plan the next coffee hour super ahead of time. So Thursday, January 25. I will expect to see some other communication around it soon here as well.
We didn't feel there would be a lot of changes in the work we'll be doing in that from now until then, so I feel it necessary to have another one right away in December.
But
To sign, for people to sign up for the land steward training, is that online on the
It's-
events or do they contact you?
it's on the event calendar now.
It is.
Yeah, I just haven't, I shared it with people that were on the wait list for the last one.
Yeah.
So I haven't announced it yet, but
Okay.
it's up there.
Good.
And the coffee hour, the next one is up on sign up as well. Too, so. And as always, if there's other trainings you want, you feel like you need, we've been talking about certain things like more chainsaw maintenance, more FX sprayer stuff. Let us know. We want to accommodate what you guys feel like you want to be trained in. So we did have a lot of trainings this year for very specific things, but always looking to have more of anything that you guys want. So.
How did the women's chainsaw class go?
Yeah, so for everyone that doesn't know, we had our first ever women's and gender minorities chainsaw class on November 3rd and 4th. It was grant funded by Fund for Women from the Madison Community Foundation. And it went really great. We had 12 people. The 2-day class was pretty intensive time-wise. So we had 12 people, and then their feedback of the instructor was great, 10 out of 10. And we had Rebecca Seibel from North American Training Solutions teach that class, so they all really valued having her as an instructor as well. So yeah, pretty great. And then we had women's and gender minorities tree and brush work day. Jan, thank you for being there. And that went great as well. So if there's any ladies and people that identify as non-binary or trans that want to come to these work days, please share those. But yeah, thanks for asking. It's really good.
I have a friend that's helping me out at Wabisa that was interested in doing that, but couldn't, she's still working, couldn't commit to that much
Yeah, it's a lot.
time, but interested in doing it.
Yeah, well, she can come to work days and at least have fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll have 2 more, and then hopefully next year we'll get the same grant and have more. We'll see.
All right, just a little update on what has been going on recently. We were able to get some fire breaks installed this fall where we needed them. Usually we're able to use our existing trails that we have plentiful in our park system for our fire breaks. And we were actually able to get some burns in. You probably saw some of the announcements that went out. We probably got 3 burn days, not huge acreages, but we like to take whatever opportunities come to us. On the left is Walking Iron Park. We were able to get about 10 or 12 acres burned there on the south half of the remnant through an area that we've logged off in the past and are promoting oak savanna. And then on the right, we burned at the group camp at Lake Farm County Park. A very frustrating burn for a lot of us that day, but it burned very well. And then one other burn, where was the third one, Shane?
Why was that so frustrating? Didn't want to burn?
Oh, the fuels were not behaving themselves very well. They were very vertical and not compressed down after the snow of the winter. So neither wanted to go really fast or not at all, based on the fuels being the way they were.
If it didn't go at all, it did go very fast eventually. So
Oh.
it would still burn, it just would backfire. You have to either flank or a lot of times give it a head fire and then it would burn because of the yeah, where was it?
Camera.
Camera. Oh, yeah.
On a very, very dry, flammable day, a lot of dry days this fall.
Yeah.
So we got at least 3 sites in that we don't have to do in the spring.
Can you burn any of this winter if the snow goes away?
Good.
You don't think about that.
Water freezing in UTVs equipment, it makes it a limiting factor.
Sure.
And then constantly rehabbing your equipment, so it's winterized.
Sure. Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, a lot of effort, a lot of effort.
Mhm.
Maybe if we get a weekend, we'll try.
Okay, just curious.
Any other questions about birds? Seed processing, we finished up our collection efforts at the end of October, a few weeks ago. A lot of the folks in this room helped out, and folks virtually, and many volunteers, school groups, corporate groups, had a pretty awesome harvest. I think the results just came in yesterday, Shane, 2,950 pounds of seed. After it's cleaned, and the value was almost about $1 million. So a little down from last year, but we thought we were going to be quite a bit down because of the drought, and not really that far down. Some species we really struck out on. Spiderwort was a really hard one this year. Shooting stars, almost none. But other species did really well. They just thrived in the drought with deep roots. So right there, it looks like maybe Baptisia has gone through the hammer mill, and we just cleaned up on Baptisia. So just unbelievable ones. Yes.
We'll have a couple of years worth.
Yes, hundreds of pounds of TRC.
Nice.
And the number we came up with for the value is not real accurate because it's the 2022 numbers that we had, so that might change, but we just like to ballpark, yeah.
Industry market value is always changing.
Now that I have these final numbers, I can send out an email to everyone that helped with seeds, no matter what the process was, and give you all that update. But I think it was about 540 hours that everyone spent in the seed shed cleaning this year. So just cleaning. So I did the math yesterday for another reason, but I don't remember the number for collection, but it was significant. So far, just with staff-led volunteer fence, we have about 6,200 volunteer hours. So that's not including, of course, any land steward hours and friends group hours. So, which is always makes it much more significant. So,
but 215 species about. It's pretty good. It's pretty diverse mixes. Coupled with what we can purchase sometimes, that's a very complete seed mix, more complete than you're gonna find most other places. So wonderful. We'll be weighing soon our bounty. I guess maybe that's the next slide there. Big shout out to Olivia and Steven, who are doing a lot of work processing. You probably worked with them in the seed shed this fall to make it all happen while we could work on other things, including burning. So weighing's coming up though. We need to develop our mixes on paper first, which is a time-consuming effort with so much seed and probably roughly 60 different sites between county sites and partner sites. Some sites have multiple seed mixes. So on paper, we've got to put these mixes together, and then when we're content with that plan, we move forward and we'll actually do the weighing out, which is very much a volunteer-heavy activity. Probably what, 2 or 3 days? I guess we should do.
Yeah.
2 or 3 days in the Libby Road Seed Shed. Sometimes before Christmas, sometimes after. Depends on how fast we get our seed mixes developed.
Challenge. You gotta think about, the park has dry hilltop and side view.
Yes.
Jack, who's seen here in this photo, has a computer program that he put together for us. That really helps in that process a lot. We still have to do some hand picking through that list that he comes up with, but he does an amazing job putting in the parameters like you might.
Even put in like, calcareous soils versus, this, that, and the other thing.
So in moisture,
Yeah.
But
Well, not moisture, but, some have a lot of calcium.
yeah, we don't get that detailed.
Just wondering.
We just go moisture.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Site priority thing. There's several factors that are involved.
That's
Yeah.
neat that he's developed.
if you want to read more about him, in our volunteer newsletter was short-lived, but maybe make a comeback someday soon. There's a spotlight about him in September or October, November's volunteer newsletter, which is all online, so you can look it up.
I think everyone here and then also virtually will be having seed mixes coming their way for their various needs. And then we will also be, what's the next slide, Claire? Putting out some seed planting, mixing, of course, before you plant, mixing it back together with our sawdust or chaff to increase the volume, and then planting. There's a lot of seed that we can plant in a mechanized way with our broadcaster, and then a lot of seed we cannot. So we have to do the old-fashioned buckets. People walking lines through the woods because we can't get a tractor through the woods, or on a slope because we don't want to drive on the slopes with stumps and everything. So it's all hands on deck for most of the winter, actually, getting seeds to actually hit the ground. Some of these work days that we'll have for hand broadcasting, either we will host, and then other seedings, I'm sure some of the folks in this room will put them out on the ground, or maybe recruit some other volunteers to help those efforts. And that's always a fun way to get new volunteers involved.
Yeah.
Like get a trail for volunteers for that.
Yes, yes. Seems like they fill up quick.
Yeah, it was a new thing that we started doing 2 years ago because I got a lot of asks about it, and we were like, well, why not try it? You know, Mary had a very successful seeding. I think it was several days of seeding, right, Mary? At Steward with volunteers, so that's pretty awesome. I think our land stewards and friends groups do more seeding events than we do, so keep it up.
Yeah, we often get the question, why do you seed in the winter? It seems weird. Most of the folks on this call probably understand, but you know, in nature, the seeds are being cast, you know, right now or just a few weeks ago in the fall, and then they sit underneath the snow all winter and stratify, and then they're ready to germinate in the spring after they've gone through the winter. So that's what we do. Just try to emulate nature and seed what nature does. If you seed too far into the spring, like you do with your garden vegetables, it just doesn't get incorporated into the soil profile with the freezing and the thawing that occurs over the winter, and you've got to physically rake it into the soil. And not all the species that need stratification will get that unless you put it in your freezer over the winter, which is more work than you need to do. So get it out over the winter, and then you can see where you've been walking and seeding with the background of the white snow there.
That's it. You don't have to bring the weed seeds all to the surface as well when you do the raking and things like that. It's no soil disturbance is good.
Yes, absolutely. All right.
Questions. At some point after the ground's frozen, coming out to Visa and consolidating all the brush piles that we got.
Ooh, yeah.
Should I wait until after the skid steers driven all over everywhere for that to broadcast? Because I'm guessing the bags will be ready around the time, you know, plus minus a couple of weeks of when come out there. And we certainly can. It's just I didn't want to broadcast them and then say, ooh, God, we shouldn't have done that. And then drive the skid steer all over.
I don't think that would have any negative effect on the maturity of your planting.
Okay.
There might be a couple areas where the seed gets buried a little bit if there's twisting and turning.
Yep.
But when the ground is frozen and you drive on those seeds, I don't think there's much of an impact at all.
Okay.
And you know, sometimes we have very limited windows to plant.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, when there's 4 inches of snow, it's easier to do than when there's 2 feet of snow.
Yep.
And then in the spring, sometimes it goes too fast and you can't get out there during the week, and then it's gone before the weekend. So,
Sure.
you know, timing is everything, and sometimes it's better to get on the ground.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And I think the the species that are going into areas like yours, that are woodsy, that just recently been cleared, are gonna be a lot of rye and grasses.
Okay,
And they're pretty tolerant, you know, of disturbance or tracking over them.
sure.
They're gonna germinate readily, I would say.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mhm. Any other questions about seed? All right.
Virtual folks, feel free to pop in anytime. Don't be shy. It's been laggy today.
Oh, okay, cool. So tree and brush removal is what we mostly work on in the fall and winter after seeds are over with, as far as collecting and processing goes. We like to remind people, you know, to work with the seasons. Brush work can be done any time of year, but fall and winter, really lovely times for doing brush work when the air isn't nearly as hot. The leaves are off the trees and the shrubs. Easier for hauling, easier for wearing chaps if you're a sawyer. And not to mention other times of the year, there's other things that need to be done. Weeds that need to be tended to that can only be tended to during narrow windows of time. Seeds that need to be collected only during normal windows of time, narrow windows of time. And then spring burn season, narrow window of time. So the brush for us often happens in the winter time when those other things can't be done. And it's pretty comfortable conditions. We often start by getting the buckthorn brush, invasive brush, under control first as our first pass through an area, which I know a lot of you are currently doing in your work areas. We like to work with you as much as possible, although we're spread really thin, with having a machine help consolidate the piles. So you might make little bundles and then you consolidate them. Or we might be coming out to your site during regularly scheduled Dane County workday that we can help as much as possible. Like we're going to Steward this Friday. We're talking to Mary and Mike about plans for this coming workday. We try to coordinate with you as much as possible, but keep in mind we're always spread pretty thin across a very vast park system. Anything else to say about this, Shane? Yes. Yes, that go.
Lars, is there a temperature below which it's not worth applying herbicide, or how low can you go?
Are you talking about stumps?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Garland is oil-based, and so you can go pretty darn cold and won't have any problems. Yes, yes. We will regularly apply, you know, well down into the single digits. As long as you want to be out there, you can apply. You might give up before the Garland gives up. The Roundup is a different story, because it's water-based, which we typically use for honeysuckles. It seems to do the best on, more so than Garland. So if you're choosing to use Roundup, or what we have is Macosm on honeysuckle, in the 20s is when it really starts to freeze up on you, maybe lower 20s. It's water-based, so you're limited. And then at that point, you just put Garland with the oil base on everything, including honeysuckle, when you get lower than those low 20s. Other questions on brush?
This is you're doing combined honeysuckle and buckthorn, which would be easiest.
We talk about this all the time. We usually will do all Garland and just deal with having some resprouts, because you're always going to get resprouts. You're always going to miss some, and then for whatever reason, you know, sometimes the shrubs just don't take in the poison, and you never really know what's going on there. So whenever you clear an area, especially the first time you cleared the area, you're always going to want to come back and tend to the follow-up, whether that's cutting and treating again or foliar treating in the summertime. So we often just go all Garland if there's a mix of honeysuckle and everything else. If someone's really meticulous, they can have both spray bottles, and we do that sometimes. But, you know, it's kind of personal preference.
And we have more of those, dauber things.
Buckthorn blasters.
Buckthorn blasters.
Yes, yeah, we just bought a whole bunch more. So folks that have appreciated using the buckthorn blasters, they're little tiny bottles that are hand sized with a little wick on one side. And they are great because you don't overspray, you just stamp the cut stump. There's no overspray, off target collateral damage. It's a little meticulous and it's intended for very small brush. You're not going to do trees with that thing. So people that are working in remnant prairies, Indian Lake, Dave Lucy, Liz is working in a very nice restoration, and then perhaps Jack out at Steward Park may be using those as well. They're very nice for those situations. And we have a lot of them over at Libby Road.
You told us about those, right, John?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
you
thank
did.
you for that.
Yeah,
Where are
I
they at?
volunteer.
At Libby?
Libby Road, yes.
Where?
I think they're in the black supply cabinet.
Okay.
At the top shelf.
Okay.
Just help yourself.
Because we're in an area right now of a ton of young buckthorn.
Okay.
It's probably 2 inches or less.
Try 'em.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, try 'em.
Okay.
I'll let this also serve as a point for a seasonal reminder to get your herbicide reporting in to Lars and Shane or myself or Ice and Track. I'll put out a wider end of season reminder for herbicide and your hours. So we're getting to the end of the year, so please give me your volunteer hours and however way you'd like to do that, whatever is best, would be great.
Claire,
Yes.
you said you were working on a log that we could enter in. Where's that?
Yeah, so like, well, we have better impact, which is what I've talked about before, is that database that is coming together. And I was gonna talk about it towards the end, but Rita, if you're listening, this is the time to better impact talking about. It's getting to a point where I can test it with the people that have been on my list for database beta testing. So Rita will get an email about it hopefully today, maybe the next few days. But if anyone of you is wanting to be a willing participant in just running through the initial volunteer onboarding of Better Impact, you can let me know and I'll have you test it out. At this point, it's not quite ready for people to input this year's volunteer hours into, but starting out next year, I think that will be the case. So just in general, if you have an Excel spreadsheet for this year, or if you have a Word document or really anything, I'll take whatever you give me for that hours tracking, that's fine. But more to come on that. It's been a little bit hectic few weeks.
would that be in place of or in addition to the ISM?
It will be in addition to, because it will really serve to be like your volunteer profile and where you put in your hours and how those activities are broken up. But also serves to be kind of a place where like you can put your certificates and just get like where you can sign up for things like this today.
Okay,
So it'll be kind of one-stop shop, but then Ice and Track is really still for Lars and Shane's records of land management activities and
Okay.
that herbicide tracking. So
All right.
you'll still have to do both. There's not a way for them to communicate with each other, but I think it'll be easier than what we're all doing now.
They serve
Everything
different
different.
purposes.
Yeah, they serve different purposes. We can't
Okay.
have the same mapping kind of structure that's in Ice and Track as we have in Better Impact. It's an entirely different platform. But we'll have
Okay.
lots of trainings about it, so
all right.
you'll have your chance to get orientated.
Claire, can I ask a quick question?
Yes,
Will Better Impact allow us to contact our volunteers and do things within the park itself? Within
yeah,
our park?
so that's kind of one function that I've been struggling with, how that's gonna work the best. I'm hoping that it can, and I think it can. I don't have enough data yet to test it. And better impact isn't super helpful when it comes to that piece of the project. But like say, you know, Liz, you're a limited admin and you have your Donald events, and Rita, same thing. If you have your Silverwood events, you can email the people signed up for those events. I just don't know if you'll have the ability to sign up for, or email anyone who's ever signed up for a volunteer activity at that park, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But you'll have the ability to communicate with your volunteers signed up for the activity directly. That makes sense. And we'll go over that. There's just a lot of different ways that people can act as administrators or limited administrators. And so we had a can of worms open last week, so I'm trying to figure out what certain things mean. So, anyway. That's all I have about that. But Rita, I'll send you an email.
Oh, okay.
Wait.
Okay.
Oh no, what's happening? Oh no. Sorry, hold on. Oh no.
Oh,
There we go. Okay.
no. Okay, so we talked about brush, and here is an old oak woodlands, oak savanna situation overgrown at Donald Park, and you can see the brush coming in the bottom, the buckthorn in the background, and the oval that's been cleared beyond this first tree. But we also, as many of you know, have encroachment of undesirable, even native trees in that rectangle to the left. So a lot of those cherries, fast-growing red oak, maple, so on and so forth, encroach upon our oak woodlands and savannas. And this nice white oak used to have living branches all up and down from about 4 feet high all the way to the top, horizontally spreading in the open. And now half of that tree, the lower half, has been killed off by those encroaching trees, not just the buckthorn. So remember the slide at the top of the painting from 1854 of what the oak openings and woodlands used to look like. There weren't a lot of these small diameter, straight and tall encroaching trees. They were very wide spread, open grown savanna, prairie trees almost. And to get back to a healthy oak opening or oak savanna, a lot of those trees have to come out. And we're doing that across many parks in our park system. Silverwood is one of those examples, with Rita here on the line. Steward Park, absolutely. We're taking a lot of encroaching walnuts, especially, away from our oaks to restore oak opening or oak savannas from that site. So we spent a lot of the winter battling not just the trees, also not just the brush, also the trees, and that presents other challenges for us. Maybe go to the next slide here, Claire. Oh, okay. Is this video functioning or not?
I can try it. Let me try something. If it doesn't work, then we'll just go over this another time. Or you all will do this on your own.
For folks that are having trouble seeing this video either here or at home, the link is on the agenda and in the slideshow, and I would really encourage you to check it out. It's often very controversial taking trees down. We're always taught how important trees are for, you know, wildlife and for cleaning the air. And not that that isn't true, but it's a little more complicated than that. We want to restore these more open community types that we had and can have. Again, here in southern Wisconsin, tree removal is actually very important and very good for the land. And the folks down at Lake County Conservation District in Illinois put together a really nice video on the importance of removing trees and how they're doing it and the benefits that they will receive from the tree removal. So I don't know if Claire, you want to try it or if it's not going to work
I'll
for us.
try it.
Welcome to MacArthur Woods, part of the Southern Des Plaines River Preserves. The Woodland Habitat Restoration Project will
I don't know.
It's
I
not
don't
gonna
think
work.
it's gonna work. It has these really long periods of lag, so.
Okay, well, check it out on your own. I think they did a very nice job of explaining the significance and the value of removing certain species to enhance the health of the land and the woodlands and savannas that they're managing. So I think one of our other volunteers, Mike Meyer from Silverwood, might have forwarded that to us. So credit to Mike there. Check that out and have a look for yourself.
Lars, has there ever been any effort to collect acorns for, you know, establishing, you know, I know out in Schumacher, there's just a couple of little oaks that aren't producing anything.
Yeah, that's a good question. I've done a little bit. Little bit. This year, we had some folks out at Lakeview Hill collect some acorns for planting, and we put them into cages. The prior year, we planted some small whips of oaks, and the ones that didn't make it, we put an acorn in there. And that's a very, in my opinion, a desirable way to plant an oak is actually with an acorn because there's no transplant shock. They will very rapidly catch up in growth to the size of a tree that was installed at a much larger size. And they don't require watering, just the fencing from the deer or rabbits if you've got a problem with critters. But we typically don't do a lot of oak planting or acorn planting. We usually spend our time creating the conditions in the woods or the savanna in which those trees will reproduce naturally. I think Shane and I talk a lot about this. Deer are obviously a big factor in our oak regeneration and recruitment in our parks throughout southern Wisconsin, beyond our parks. But even with the deer, even more important than that is the lack of sunlight that we have in our forests nowadays. They've all been encroached upon by these trees of other species, mesic forest tree species coming in where there would have been gaps between oaks in the past because of regular fire coming through and thinning out those trees, those saplings, that brush. That fire doesn't occur anymore, and it hasn't for decades. So now we've got a situation where all this brush and tree growth fills in those light gaps between the oaks, and you don't get your oak recruitment because of that. The deer are probably a big factor as well, but even in areas with high deer populations, we see oak seedlings and saplings coming up, especially in areas, or maybe almost exclusively in areas of high light availability.
We can look at a property that has some timber on it and a woods, and right next to a prairie, and there'll be absolutely no oak recruitment in the woods, and the prairie will be loaded with oaks. It's almost like, you know, the deer won't go in the prairie, right? Well, that's wrong. It's the sunlight that is the limiting factor, we believe, to this whole conundrum with the oaks. I was on Wisconsin Deer Council, or whatever the heck the program was called, for 6 years. And the DNR would collect this data from the Forest Service. They would check all the sites around the state, and there's absolutely no oak recruitment anymore on any of these sites that they've been monitoring for decades. And, you know, of course, it seems like the deer are the problem, but I think it's the other way around. It's the light. There's been no management of those areas, and so the other trees have grown up. That's why there's no.
That's the case out at Wabisa. As we're going through and thinning stuff, all the buckthorn and the honeysuckle, obviously, there's nothing in there. It's all shaded out, but all the young oaks that we're seeing are at the edge of the prairie.
There you go.
Might it also be though that you clear everything out except the big oaks, and the deer don't find a good habitat for them either. You know, So,
They
Probably
like the
both ways.
brush, yeah.
no place to hide, not much to eat.
And then they move on. Yep.
That would be wonderful.
Yes.
Well, seems like it's working a little bit, like you have.
Yeah,
If you were gonna plant them, would you bury them or just cast them?
It's a good question too.
Because squirrels, it seems like if they were just on the surface would.
Yeah, there's, you certainly have a mortality factor if you just throw them on the ground, you know. I think either way, burying
Okay.
some, throwing some. If you have 1,000 acorns, you're not gonna probably wanna bury 1,000. Maybe you could plant 10% or something like that.
we got some dibblewires. We use dibblewires. Yeah.
So would it make sense to try to get bur oaks in some of the farm fields that were converted to prairie that have no trees?
Yeah, and so a lot of times, like even at Yahara, Cherokee Marsh, we're seeing young bur oaks on the county side, I'm sure the
Yeah.
city side as well,
Yeah.
coming into the prairies. Just finding it on there because jays will take and cache them and, you know, squirrels move them around and they don't remember where they put them all. And you certainly can take and put acorns in the ground to want to get them going. But I think as long as you created those conditions of sunlight availability, and keeping the brush back through regular fire, great if you could reduce deer too, but you will get those trees coming on your own
Yeah.
without even having to plant them. But it's always fun to plant them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels good inside when, you know, you do that and then you see one grow. It's like, I did that. Right?
The Friends of Prairie Marine they're gonna do a whole acorn planting, right?
They've done tree planting and they'll tell you how much work that is to maintain. But we have talked about putting some acorns in to help along. Yeah, as well.
I would like to see you plant hazel brush instead of oaks.
Yeah.
For purposes of an oak woodland or oak savanna, do we care what kind of oak? Is there like, you know, fir, red, pin oaks, whatever, do we care or is it an oak and oak?
No, we do care. For if you're targeting an oak savanna or oak opening, typically we're targeting fir or white oak.
Okay,
Occasionally you might have a black oak in there. Even if you look at the old land survey notes, they had black oaks present on the landscape, but those are more tolerant and faster growing species.
okay,
I tend to try to go with the fir and the white, which are the classic oak savanna species. And if you have a few blacks in there, that's fine too. I just don't like when those are dominant, unless you're in a sand barrens situation, those are more prevalent.
okay,
But at Wabisa, for example, in that field that we have there, that's probably best to try to go with fir or white.
okay. So if we were doing acorns, we need to pay attention to what the acorns are under.
Yep, exactly.
Okay,
Yep, exactly.
They're pretty easy to identify once you start noticing, you know, what they look like.
okay,
I think that wasn't a DNR like paying people to collect
Yes.
acorns, so you could collect some acorns and keep some, but also.
And I just watched a video this weekend on a gentleman who forages for acorns. And the white, and I'm sorry, the red and black acorns have a lot more tannic acid, is that the right term? In it. And so they boil the acorns, and that boils the acid out of them, and then they are not so bitter and you can eat them.
Kathleen Wolf makes acorn bread. I've had it.
She's supposed to be here today.
I
She can
know.
tell us all about
It's
it.
a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, but I thought it was interesting. And if you like to forage and have a little spare time, maybe it's something good for you.
Right.
Oh, what's
Yeah, this is one figure from a book called The Vanishing Present about changes on the Wisconsin landscape. Pretty interesting read if you want to pick it up at the library sometime. This sort of illustrates the decline of oak in Wisconsin. This is strictly looking at floodplain forests along the Wisconsin Riverway, going from Stevens Point all the way down through to southwest Wisconsin. Very sandy soil, sand terraces in some areas, so while it could be wet, it could also be very appropriate habitat for oak, as we see in some of our county parks along the Wisconsin River in northwest Wisconsin, or northwest Dane County. Over the course of the last almost 200 years, we've seen maple increase at almost all of these locations along the Wisconsin River, and a corresponding decrease in oak. And that has to do a lot with fire suppression, not being, these lands not being burned, and allowing maple to encroach, very fire intolerant species, along with many other trees that will come in after a fire has been removed from the landscape. So for those of us that are concerned about oak communities, and we understand the importance of oak for wildlife and all sorts of other values, this is concerning to see figures like this. And one of the reasons we do the work that we do to clear around oak trees, reintroduce fire, is a very important process to maintaining oak, and helping us understand when we take care of the oak, we are also taking care of the rest of the community, because it is such an important species that pulls that community together. Just in the fact that its leaves that it drops are flammable and allows us to manage that land with fire has a very important impact on the rest of that community, the plants, the invertebrates, and everything else around it that depends upon that fire. So just a little bit of data. So, yeah.
What was the name of the book?
The Vanishing Present.
I'll put it in the chat.
Want to talk about this one, Shane?
Yeah, so we were able to purchase a tree shears that is mounted onto our skid loader. Tried purchasing one for the last few years. Ordered one, they sent the wrong one, finally got the new one, so this has been quite a process for us. But it's finally here and we've put it to use. Yeah, we you can take a tree. That's not our machine, but it's one very much like it. It's a stock photo, but we can take trees about 14 inches or less with that. It really likes trees in about the 10-inch range. We gave it a good test down at Anderson Park. Chris Cole operated it for about a full day. He had a breakdown and was there for 2 days, but equivalent about 1 day of work, and put down the pine trees were very tall, 80 feet, 60, 80 feet tall. And he put down about 150 trees in 1 day. And it was not ideal conditions for the tree shears. Claire and I stopped down to Anderson the other day and visited with one of the friends for a few minutes who was bucking these trees up and said they will be busy for months.
Yeah.
So we look forward to this tool being used extensively in the park system for our land clearing efforts. We like to do all the small stuff, the brush with loppers, chainsaws, so on. And then we get to this size, that take quite a while to put on the ground and then buck. And this machine can literally do it in seconds.
When it's on the ground, can it snip it into 8-foot pieces?
No. So then we come,
Nice.
that's where we still need the sawyers. Sawyers will come in and delimb the tree and buck it at about 8 or 10 foot lengths. And we've had high success, as you know, from Yahara and Rita down at Silverwood, Mary at Steward, bringing this wood to a location where individuals can get to it, and people are taking it like crazy for firewood. And we had like a half acre of wood on the ground, at Silverwood and disappeared in a matter of weeks. Rita can testify to that. I don't even know how many cords that would definitely have. So, but we're really looking forward to this tool in combination with our grapple. We think we're really going to be able to increase our production over the next couple of years using this equipment. So.
Rita says, I wonder if the new skid steer cutter would work good in the Siberian elm unit that they've been ignoring at Silverwood.
Yeah, we had a work day at Walking Iron with volunteers yesterday in northwestern county, and Chris and John had sheared a bunch of trees and laid them into a farm field. And then with our volunteers and our seasonal folks, we cut the trees up, limbed them, and stacked them. And then the machine came by and grabbed the brush stacks. So we had all scales of equipment usage, from chainsaws to different high pieces of equipment to handwork, literally handwork. And it all is important to blend all that stuff. If all we have is the heavy equipment, we're that's not great. If all we have are loppers, that's not great. But we like to talk about our model being a blending of all these tools and taking advantage of their efficiencies, what they're good at. That's a secret sauce to what we do.
And for every efficiency one of these pieces of equipment has, they have an efficiency too, right? So that's where we all come in.
Yep, working together.
Are the shears just lower cost? Because like there's been feller bunchers that are saw based, big 3-foot diameter saw or whatever.
Yeah,
it's all hydraulic, but is it just cheaper to do shears than?
It's a $20,000 piece of equipment, much less dangerous. If we were to buy a hot saw or something like that, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. So okay. I would say it's, an economy buy for us.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And if we had one of those hot saws and we spend that kind of money, we really have to put a lot of timber on the ground to, make it worth our while. And I don't think that we could keep up.
What is that saw? Yeah.
It's, like a feller buncher or whatever, they make hot saws that very much like this. You just grab it, cuts it, drop it, and you just cut down trees per minute, not minutes per tree.
Coming to a park near you.
Very soon.
Multiple skid steers, so like you can have one that's doing that and one that's got the grapple.
Yes, we do. Right now we have one that's broken down that's getting worked on, but
okay.
That is the game plan, to have 2 pieces of equipment, dueling skid loaders.
All right, this is our slide to say all pieces of equipment are important. While we have all these tools, they all have their place. And during our Certified Land Steward, Shane walks us through a section on tool usage and what we use tools for. And just because there's something with a dinky little motor doesn't mean it doesn't have its place, and it does that job better than anything else. So together, blending all these things, all these different tools of techniques is the secret sauce around here. So this winter, we look forward to brush cutters with the steel blades for small diameter brush, chainsaws. I think that's Claire there in the middle. Yeah, Morton Forest, I think.
Yeah.
And then folks, if you haven't used our leaf blowers with these metal pipes, these things are brilliant. Thank you to the Friends of Anderson Park for dreaming these pipes up. They're downspout pipes that we put on the end of our blowers, and we blow it right into the coals of our brush piles. And that just floods the pile with oxygen and agitates it, so that those coal piles in the brush pile will burn up tremendously fast. As you probably are aware, we've got problems sometimes with brush pile burning, and that's why we've got procedures to follow in burning piles, because people will see the piles, they get worried, they call the fire department responds in a hurry. There's really no emergency, but they have to respond anyway, and then it results in a lot of confusion and phone calls that slow us all down from the good work we want to do. So getting these piles burned up and extinguished as fast as possible is a very important thing for us to do in the wintertime, and these leaf blowers help us tremendously in that. We do have blowers available at Libby. They might be flying off the shelves, I don't know, and we've got the blower pipes. So if you need these or multiple of these, check with Libby, let Claire know if you take one so we can know where they're all at. And if you need more, let us know. We will either have some extras somewhere in our holdings, or maybe we need to buy more. I think we buy some every year because they get gobbled up and put to use. So just some tools that we look forward to using, and a special emphasis on those leaf blowers.
Are those just regular aluminum downspouts?
Yeah, yeah. We've
Not
had-
aluminum.
Or galvanized.
Yeah, aluminum will burn.
steel.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Yep. We've had a hard time finding ones big enough like this one that go over the plastic downspout. We've looked all over the place. They don't seem to make them. We found one that's just big enough to go over the plastic downspout, but you need to cut a slice in it and then put a hose clamp on it. So that's what we've been using lately. And it works just as well. It's just a little different setup.
And what's the store that we get those from?
God, I think it might be True Value. Or
Yeah.
True Value. Yeah, they have to special order them. So we buy a bunch of them every year. And if you want some, yeah, we'll give you a couple segments of those.
Just to clarify, when you say plastic downspout, you mean plastic
Plastic tube,
tube from the.
Lower.
and it's a galvanized downspout steel. That's the tube that goes over the plastic. Sorry if I misspoke.
It is a dream tool.
Yeah. Okay, a little reminder, we were gonna talk safety, but we were thinking this might even be more timely. Brush pile burnings, we're gonna have plenty of good brush pile burning days this winter. We've had a few already this week, but remember to check your handbook. There are a few important tidbits of information here that will save us a lot of confusion and conflict with the public and the fire departments locally. So please make sure to notify your locals, and you can find that in Appendix 6 of the handbook, as well as the non-emergency duty supervisor. And then we need snow on the ground, or to have the burn piles be on bare agricultural harvested soil where they have no chance of escape. There's a few other conditions environmentally, you know, you don't want it to be 25 miles howling wind. You're gonna put sparks up into those dead oak limbs, and they are gonna catch like nothing, and they're gonna be on fire forever. So let's make sure the wind isn't too strong, and the smoke isn't blowing towards, you know, roads and buildings and that kind of stuff. And then, as we mentioned, we really want to have those blowers on there and make sure that they're out when you leave. It's not our law. We can't supersede state law. State law says we have to have the fires out, and that's why people call, and that's why the fire department shows up to our parks. They have a lot in the past, and we're really minimizing those emergency calls by getting these blowers on these piles and getting them blown out, burned out by the end of the day. So per state law, they must be extinguished. Maybe someday the state will say, the DNR will say, hey, if there's snow on the ground, let her rip. But right now, that's not the law, and we have to listen to what the state says. Comments or questions on that?
We burned piles yesterday at Walking Iron. And we did a couple of prescribed burns, as you saw, as well as some of our colleagues in land management across the state during that week. And what we could take home from that week and yesterday's burning is that the fuel moisture is very dry in the fuels. And trees are catching on fire. So if you are to burn piles, get some more snow and burn some piles. You know, make sure the wind's in the right direction so you're not blowing your embers into a beautiful bur oak tree that's gonna catch on fire, and the only way to put it out is to cut it down. We don't wanna be doing that. So just be cognizant of that. Until we get some rain type moisture, these trees are gonna be very dry, and the embers will catch up top of these trees, especially in the high wind conditions that Myers is talking about.
Yeah, we get 3 to 4 million visitors in our parks every year. It's just going up and up. Fastest growing county, and every time something's burning, we'll notice it.
Every time.
I wish that wasn't the case. It's just the reality of living in Dane County. So that's why we have to have these checklists, and like to remind folks about it. Questions on that?
Is the Verona fire chief still on top of us?
Yeah, we're on a very thin ice with some fire chiefs around the county. So another reason why we need to reinforce these. And if you have questions, give us a holler about any of this stuff. I mean, we're trying to make it as crystal clear, but it's not always. There's nuance and gray area here. So call us if you have any questions. Some fire chiefs are at their wits' end with us. And then some fire chiefs we're in very good standing, and we want to be that way with everyone as much as we possibly can.
What's their complaint? That we were leaving fires unattended?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Or they weren't extinguished. They were purposely left unattended, and people left for the day, or they just couldn't physically get the fire out and they left for the day. And then they get a phone call from Joe Public, and they have to respond. Some fire chiefs will say, nah, I don't want to respond, but they're supposed to by law respond.
Yeah.
And 90% of them will.
Okay.
And that is a volunteer fire department that has to call in their family, call in to their members, their department crew that are, having dinner with their family.
Yeah.
Or even in the middle of the night, they've had to rush to our parks to put out fires.
For basically no reason.
Yeah. All right.
Even if there's snow on the ground, I mean, they still respond.
Okay.
And they don't like that I can get it, I understand.
What would be the case at Wabisa where there's 2 locked gates that they'd have to go through?
They would cut them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if they had keys.
Donald, the Tuesday guys have a huge brush pile. Seen it. I mean, how big is too big? Because it just keep adding to it, and they're talking about having some kind of even event, maybe. I'm thinking, no, that if you do that, it's gonna be hours, it's 10 hours.
Yeah, so if that is a huge pile of brush, and like Shane was saying, that the fuels are really dry right now, it could very well burn up, especially if they had blowers on it. You could burn that up in the day. If it's got big logs on it, that's gonna burn a very long time. Even with blowers, it might not come out go out at the end of the day. So we try to keep them manageable in size so that we can make sure to have them out by the end of the day, and we'll actually stop feeding the pile late morning so that we know we'll be able to get it out. But if it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's the size of this room, then it's probably a little risky in terms of being able to get it out. Quarter?
Yeah.
That's pretty big.
Very big.
Yeah.
It's been like all year.
Yeah.
But that is a pile that lit early in the morning and blowers on it, and it might burn up. As long as, like I said, the heavy fuels, once you start getting big fuels in there, that really changes the game.
No, to camp out there.
Yeah. They get the bunkhouse right there. It'll stay all night.
Yeah, right.
Other questions or comments?
What's the picture on the right?
Folks might be able to.
A stump.
That's when you're treating stumps, you only need to treat the cambium. So the outer edge or the collar of the stump there, just inside the bark, is the conductive tissue for the tree. Where the bottle is sitting, that's heartwood, that's non-conductive, and you don't need to treat that. So if you got a big tree, or even, you know, something like this, you can just treat the edge. And save your herbicide. You're not doing any good if you treat the whole thing. If it's a little brush stump, you can't just treat the edge. It's impossible. But yeah, for bigger trees, that's how you treat. Okay. Yep. Good question.
Say, Lars, yesterday when I called in to the Mount Horeb Fire Department, I gave the nearest house address, and the person asked me, well, is that in the village of Mount Horeb or is that on DNR land? And I thought it didn't kind of matter, right? Because we're following the DNR protocol. But is there a reason our local fire department needs to know in Steward, where we kind of go into the township versus the village? Do I need to be clear with them? Because wouldn't it'd be the Mount Horeb Fire Department responding anyway?
Yeah, you're right on the border. I think you're technically outside of the DNR jurisdiction, but like by a hair. It really doesn't matter. You should call the locals anyways. They would be the one responding. They were probably just wondering if you were technically in village jurisdiction or outside, but either way, Mount Horeb would be the one to respond. So it's kind of irrelevant if I'm understanding your question. Okay.
So maybe you should show me the boundary. I thought I knew it. I thought it was, like in the upper area of Stewart that's adjacent to Blueview Drive or Viking Road or any of those, there's all these houses around. That seems.
I think your answer is you're in the village.
Okay.
Boundary is up towards the north by the lake. If they really need to know, I'm almost certain that boundary is too far north of you. You're always going to be in the village.
Yeah.
But it almost doesn't matter because our rules are they're mirroring the DNR as far as snow on the ground and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, never had that question. Other questions?
I just had, I don't know, a comment or maybe a question on the OFS crews. I've worked with them a couple of times in the winter, and you see the kids come out in nylon ski jackets, totally inappropriately dressed. I don't know if there's grants or anything that can be done to get them a decent jacket and pants or something, because I suspect you go out there and you rip up your only jacket, that's gonna, kind of put a damper on you wanting to do that anymore. And it just, when you're working around briars and stuff and the nylon carcass and stuff, just gets shredded.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've come a long ways since started working with OFS as far as the county. I don't know which crews you've worked with in the past, but I remember going out to a site in the wintertime and one of the young people were wearing their Nike Air Jordans on site, and between the supervisors at Operation Fresh Start and myself, we've had conversations about proper work attire and things like that. So I think OFS is up their game with their, at least they have heavy sweatshirts or something like that for their young people. That's the supervisors of Operation Fresh Start to worry about, not us. They're a well-funded organization and need to take care of their staff. But if there is something, yes, I would like to know. We've had had volunteers come to events wearing goose down jackets before. And when Ember hits a goose down jacket, it looks like somebody shoots a goose. You know, so there's lots of different things that, you know, aren't really appropriate for doing this kind of work. But I'm not their supervisor.
Yeah.
I can only pass on the information to their folks, letting them know. Mary, what are you seeing out there for uniforms from the Operation Fresh Start folks this year?
So they all have sweatshirts, but they get donations from Land's End, like catalog clearances. So we had somebody in a beautiful long down coat yesterday. But it had already been pretty sparked up from last year when somebody else was wearing that beautiful coat. So I think sometimes they are just operating with what they have, you know, and they have a downstairs at Operation Fresh Start, they have winter jackets and snow pants, but you can imagine they're from Land's End, so they don't have fireproof kind of or melt proof exterior, but they can be encouraged to put sweatpants on the outside of the insulated jackets. That helps. In fact, I think Nate wears just a sparked up sweatshirt just for his own, you know, our crew leader that we work with a lot. So they have a variety, but we also try to have some other tasks. Maybe it's seed to strip, or maybe it's hauling from a different area where there's not fire. We try to give other options, but just frequently it's just because they're making do with the Land's End donations.
And I do believe that Carhartt might have sponsored them last year with some sort of grant too for some jackets, if I remember right too. So I've donated a bunch of winter clothes for my family to Operation Fresh Start. So there's, you know, people with, you know, old coats that would work great for underprivileged youth that are just sitting in their closet. I'm sure we can get them to Wafest and put them to good use as well.
They have on their website, they have a wish list where you can directly buy stuff that they need and donate.
I know Red Wing has been a sponsor for their boots and stuff the last 2 years, I think. So, and I don't know how that works exactly, but I think they just have like a bunch of boots and they kind of like rotate out sizes and stuff. Like, I don't know if Price with them or not, but
They're trying to figure out something with Duluth Trading Company. So far, they haven't had a great response, but they're on it. So
Challenges.
Yeah. I just, you know, I just saw it and I just felt sorry for the kids, and I just think that's gonna just be discouraging. And you know, my only jacket and I'm out here ripping it up. I'm not
Melting it.
Yeah.
I think when you're that age too, you think it may be cool and you're not like aware of how much actually that stuff costs and what you're doing with your parents' pocketbook.
So OFS has a wish list on their website. Okay.
Back to cutting a tree brush.
Yeah.
Top of my mind. So I've been doing a little reading since I'm fairly new at this, and I'm reading, well, you know, 1 or 2 inches off the ground, you're cutting the blockers. It's about what you want to do. Well, once we get snow, let's suppose we do the snowy winter, and you've got snow up to here. Is it still worth doing it?
You know,
Are you going to get sufficient absorption? Yeah.
Just this time of winter is so lovely.
Yeah.
And we're gonna think back on those days at Walking Iron with 1 inch of snow, perfect conditions. Because, yeah, you're right. When you get into 8, 10, 12 inches of snow, man, and you're trudging through it and it just makes the whole process harder. Yeah, it's personal preference. If you don't want to work in that deep snow, I don't blame you. We either will kick the snow away from the trees and shrubs to get down lower. Because even if you treat that stump, you still have, these punji sticks sticking up that you're gonna trip over
Right.
next
We have
year.
that.
Yeah.
And they resprout.
Yeah, or we pop a tire, or sometimes they don't go all the way down and translocate.
Yeah.
So we will kick the snow away to get them nice and low. Sometimes you can only get so low because the snow is so deep. So it's your decision. If you don't want to work in those conditions, that's not.
It's really effectiveness. I mean, some of these volunteers, they'll work in just about any condition,
Yeah.
but if it's not terribly effective, if you can't get really down, it's feels like a waste of energy.
We've had, fair, decent success with killing a tall stump, but like we were saying earlier, there's always follow-up.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have stumps that you miss, you're gonna have stumps that the snow wiped over the top and kind of wiped off some of the herbicide and probably didn't translocate very well because it wasn't concentrated enough. So, we will, as a habit, go back in the summer and foliar treat areas that had resprouting, or we've had mowers come by and knock those stumps lower, which can be done with a brush cutter a lot of times too, with a metal blade on it. So yeah, you're gonna have a harder process and probably more follow-up for snow. But a lot of times, I'm willing to accept it, because you're gonna go back anyways, and it's better than not getting any work done.
Yeah, right.
It's up to you.
The real big issue, I think, is when you have, if you're cutting stumps at a foot,
Yeah.
is you have swampers, and they're gonna be trying to navigate these landmines and will likely trip. And where is one of the stubbies gonna go if you land on one of them? If they're cut at an angle, is it gonna puncture someone's ribs or their lungs? I would be better off to not lop it at the ground and not treat it than to leave it at a foot and treat it, in my opinion.
Yeah, we have the first work day in that Savanna area and the adjacent area, there was snow. It was Dane County Parks work day. And those stumps were there the next year when we went back, and they're still there, and they are really on a slope. Stumps like this.
Handles too to climb.
At Prairie Moraine, they aren't able to treat the stumps in the dog park unless the park's closed. So they will sometimes go in and they'll cut stumps at like really high, really high.
Yeah.
And then they can deal with all the branches and the brush because they still are gung ho and they want to get somewhere.
Yeah, we can too, and then you come back.
And then you come back when there's no snow and kind of flushing that tree with that. It's you're coming back to the same place twice. It's not very efficient, but the alternative is getting no work done. It's up to the land steward to decide. We can just kind of help you, inform your decision.
Safety first, in those conditions.
Do you use brush cutters or loppers?
Use loppers.
Oh, okay. Because the brush cutters you can just go down in the snow and.
We're a no noise crew.
Okay.
Very good turnout.
But yeah, people come for that.
Yeah.
I think they do.
12 people.
And 15, already have 11 for this Saturday, so.
Liz has found her niche.
Apparently, yeah.
Calling.
Goes back to the tool thing,
Yeah, some of it, last weekend I asked people, because we had I had 6 new people, and I said, well, why have you come? And some people, my veterans were saying, because it's quiet.
You want to work them.
Any other final thoughts? And I'll shut this recording down.
Thanks, virtual folks.
Ooh, one more thing, OFS folks, if you're looking to get the crew out this winter, reach out to me, send me an email when you're looking for. I'll send you the link to the calendar so you can see who's spoken for. Hopefully we'll have our 3rd crew online here in a matter of weeks and be at full force again. We have some dates on the calendar, but still fairly open if you want, we're gonna have a crew. So email me and I'll get you the information you need and we'll get it set up, okay?